Welcome to the EatingCast. I am Chris.
And I'm Vincent. And today we're joined by Kaze Jones.
What up?
What's up?
What's up?
Before we begin,
Chicago, what's good with it?
Hey, before we begin, I'm just going to read a little bit about what Kaze Jones is about and what he's done and what he's doing. So, armed with a lyrical style that's both gritty and self-aware, Long Beach indie hip-hop artist Kaze Jones drops his highly anticipated debut solo album, Inside Out, with veteran SoCal artist and producer Ariano. Although Kaze has been grinding... Shout out to Ariano. Although Kaze has been grinding in the LA underground hip-hop scene for the better part of 10 years with his crew, Dusty Crates, Inside Out is an intensely personal project that has allowed him to speak on issues close to his own heart and in an unfiltered voice. As an artist who has always been connected to his community, whether as a math teacher who taught at Redondo Beach High School and a charter middle school in South Central, or as a mentor and father figure to disadvantaged youth, Kaze uses his skills to connect with people through the craft of lyrics and delivery. Recorded over a period of 14 months, Inside Out is an effortless collaboration between Kaze and the Ariano, with the latter producing, mixing, and mastering the entire project. It's an album that has been 14 years in the making, beginning with an 18-year-old Kaze seeing Ariano performing at a show in Long Beach and snagging a free CD. And following Ariano's career as a fan for years and ultimately coming full circle in 2017 through a series of Instagram DMs leading to the recording of the first track, Lessons. The single proved there was an undeniable music chemistry between the two artists and paved the way for the two to begin creating Inside Out, an album with shared goal of staying true to LA underground hip-hop roots while delivering truth with a worldwide reach. The duo's intentions for the project became clear with the aforementioned lead single Lessons, a gritty and emotional track where Kaze delivers intense lessons in his verses as Ariano produces a raw, honest hook coupled with his musing production. From there, Kaze and Ariano dropped Karma, a track that delves into the ills of society and how what goes around comes around. This leads into the most socially conscious single released off Inside Out, Where Will We Run? A cry for help and a brutally honest reaction to the fear and anger that we have come to know in these uncertain times of gun violence. While just about every track on Inside Out carries an awareness of society at large, perhaps the most impactful track is Go for Broke, which pays homage to and commemorates the contributions of the Japanese-American 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the U.S. Army during World War II. As a second-generation Japanese-American himself, this was a special project for Kaze and opened the door for him and Ariano to work with the Go for Broke Foundation, the Japanese National History Museum, and have the track incorporated into curriculums within the LA Unified School District, UCLA, and Cal State. These tracks and the remainder of the Inside Out all carry messages of social awareness with a crew featuring artists who believe in that message, offering their own perspectives. Collaborator Ariano maintains the largest presence, providing hooks and sample-free live instrument production that drives the album forward. LA hip-hop heavyweights Asylum? Is it Asylum?
Oh, AC Alone? Freestyle Fellowship?
Yeah.
He's an OG. I ain't listened to him back in the day. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, no, you're good. I didn't know how to pronounce his name.
AC Alone, yeah. Look him up later. He's dope.
All right. Born a Lot and LA Symphony's Cookbook all make protege Lil Danny Boy and Ariano's own son, Sage Price. Kaze's crew, Dusty Crates, and his longtime collaborator, Dunce, also appear. Inside Out is an album that stays true to LA Underground and Long Beach sounds, with pieces of both woven to every part of the project. From the gramminess of Kaze's in-your-face verses and 90s hip-hop influenced tones and Ariano's deep roots in the scene, to El Don the Cut, El DJ for Sublime.
LD on the Cut. If you know Sublime, he's Sublime's DJ.
Oh, okay. I'll check him out too. The album plays tribute to their musical origins while also honoring Kaze's Japanese-American heritage. From the track Go for Broke to the project's Japanese-inspired artwork created by Long Beach artist June Lagoon, it all creates a flawless project proving that Kaze Jones can't be put into a box with his hip-hop style. He's part of a new wave of artists in a growing Asian-American hip-hop scene, backed by Raw Tunes, David Ng, Todd Walden, an artist-driven clothing company dedicated to bring original and timeless designs into the streets. Kaze Jones, along with Ariano, is ready to bring fire with Inside Out. Welcome. That was a long one, but
I didn't know you were going to read the whole thing. I thought
all of it.
I didn't know you were going to read it. I felt super bad. I was like, "Are you reading it?" Like,
That was holy crap. That was a lot. That's a lot of information. We'll have to pause and break it down definitely. But definitely again, Kaze Jones, welcome, and thank you
Thanks
again
for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. It's definitely a pleasure to have you on. So with currently like everything that's going on with a lot of the social justice movements that's currently happening around all around the states, all across the world, and just raising more awareness of just kind of like the white supremacist, in a sense, like in a sense, the white supremacist way of like dealing with just the minority groups. How are you kind of handling this right now? What are you?
So, I mean, I taught in South Central, which is like primarily the student demographic was over 90% African American. So I was a step master. I was talking to Vincent earlier about how I didn't even know he's a Lambda. So we're in the same fraternity, and he knows that we worked closely with some of the Black fraternities like the Alphas. A5A, and we would do a lot of step competitions. Anyways, I taught in the district in LAUSD at South Central for like a good 3 years. I was head of the math department, taught middle school. But so I did see a lot of the societal issues, a lot of the injustice. I can share a story maybe later on. So I very much knew the BLM before it went, it sparked a lot of interest and a lot of hype and momentum in social media. But right now, it talks about Danny Boy. He was kind of like an adopted son. Just to give a little insight, he was one of my former students. He never really knew his father. He was undocumented. He came to me in 8th grade, and he was valedictorian. He was president of my hip hop club. Trip H Club, and he lost his mother during this process. He had about 5 siblings, I think, 4 or 5, and he lived in this place called the Jungle. So in LA, there's it's like a blood neighborhood. So it's like one of the really well-known like gang-infested neighborhoods. They call it the Jungle. But he pretty much grew up there with like living in a 3-bedroom with like 4 other families. So he knew struggle. He grew up with it, yet he was that rose that grew up from concrete. And right when that whole ICE detainment thing happened, he was well on his way. I was trying to prep him for college, which he now attends Cal State Pomona. But that whole time, he could have easily went down that darker path, started gangbanging, started slanging. But I kept him on route, you know what I mean, for college readiness. And so the reason why I'm telling the story is because he was my inspiration, and one as an educator to advocate for social justice, but he's like family to me. So for anybody else that will remind me of Danny, anyone that's an asylum seeker, who's an immigrant, who's just looking for a better life, right? And when DACA wasn't approved, meaning that the immigrants, undocumented students weren't able to apply for citizenship. He finally was lucky. He got his worker's permit. But I was willing to adopt him as a teacher and as a mentor. Didn't have parents, but I wanted to keep him on track. I thought if I could adopt him and grant him citizenship, then he would be eligible for financial aid and other opportunities. So even this shirt right now. So this is my sponsor from Raw Tunes. Never Again Is Now is a huge movement. It's part of that biography that Vincent just read. I've been working with a lot of the Japanese American community groups. Go for Broke, which was comprised of first generation, second generation Japanese Americans back in World War II. And so they were the ones who were deemed enemy alien 4C, put into internment camps like Manzanar, Heart Mountain, etc. And then these same people that were, stationed in various camps, they also enlisted for the army, because not only were they trying to show their loyalty, their dedication for their country, they are Japanese, but they're Japanese American. So I feel like that story was so powerful. It resonated with me because I'm a second generation Japanese American. And so these groups, these Japanese American community groups, and even Go for Broke, they're involved with like Nikkei progressives, and they're teaming up with like some Jewish community groups, even LGBTQ, and even some of the Chicano American activist groups, and even the Native American activist groups. And they're all kind of working together for this culmination in a movement called Never Again Is Now. And that doesn't only apply to the asylum seekers and the people who are wrongfully detained and with wrongful treatment, right, at our borders. It would be in line and aligned with what's going on with Black Lives Matter and all these other movements that are kind of going about in the country. Like it's all kind of the same thing, you know, like these, the reason why we learn history is to not repeat mistakes. And so Never Again Is Now, let's not repeat those same mistakes that we have throughout history, throughout the world. That's what I've been doing. And then the last song I released was Never Again Is Now. Mm-hmm. I actually did a case study with UCLA, trying to get published literally at the moment. And I don't know if you guys saw that, maybe Vincent saw what I posted with the case study, that like a little mini video documentary. Yeah, so I've been trying to align my music with my education and activism kind of synergistically, I guess. Awesome. And the last song, Never Again Is Now, just to piggyback, this sure is going to be a fundraiser. All proceeds, my clothing sponsor is going to be collabing with me, and we're trying to put 100% of proceeds to this one organization called RACE. I forget what the acronym stood for, but basically they're looking for legal representation, any sort of aid that they could provide asylum seekers and people who are wrongfully detained. Originally, I wanted to work with a group called Border Angels, and what they did, they would offer like little childhood development classes, and there was like a pop-up education bus with like all sorts of arts and crafts and like mentors. But due to COVID, all these services were kind of suspended. I don't know the political side of it, but a lot of that got kind of cut. So I went with the other organization. So hopefully we can make any impact. I mean, even if we get $1, that's still a donation. whatever we get, we're going to try to contribute as much as possible.
Definitely. So like
that's a lot of good work you're doing.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of work.
Sorry, I like jumbled up a whole bunch of stuff in like 5 minutes.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool, man.
I was rambling. All right.
But yeah, definitely like, that's crazy, right? Like, just to kind of like piggyback off what you said, Kaze, like, kind of how you found Danny and just kind of like had that really not just motivate you, but also motivate him to kind of like, you know, pursue bigger things, right? And for yourself as well, right? Now you're kind of like, you're speaking out for like a lot of social justice issues that's currently like flying around in our society right now, right? And kind of like having Danny in the background, kind of like helping him, right, as an undocumented that lost his father and mother and a sibling, and has 4 or 5 other siblings, was it? Yeah, that's just
Abraham. 4 other siblings. So
So in total, 5.
Total of 5. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's just crazy. You know, like living in like that area of the jungle, right, in like Cali, it's like to be so easily like swept into like just the gang world and just kind of like absorbed into it, just because it's a way for him to, in a sense, find protection, right? Or find something that he can grasp onto in order to like just survive for himself and for his, his family that's left here. It's just a crazy thought that could have been the route he went, but meeting you was the big turning point in his life, where you put everything out there to really just give him the opportunity and give him the chance to pursue college and go to college, and without really having to worry as much for money, right? And trying to find a living while pursuing his dreams, right? That's just a big thing that we tend to like not really overlook, especially in like the States, right? It's like we're a country of like, just individualists, right? People that are just kind of like hustling and bustling, all about just trying to pursue whatever they want to pursue for themselves. And then here we are, like, you know, as a community, right, just kind of coming together and just kind of like feeding into positive energy, where we're saying like, no, you don't need to do this. There's another way. And then you just kind of showed him that he can pursue his dreams. That's just beautiful.
Kaze, how did you find that connection with him? Because did you have a similar childhood as he did?
No, I grew up in a fairly affluent neighborhood. I was pretty blessed, but I mean, I've seen both sides of it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'll briefly touch on parents were my dad was a minister, so we lived on like a church when I was younger. And then so we lived off church donations. So like there was a point when, I mean, I didn't know we were poor. I mean, I guess on paper we weren't making much. And then so after my parents kind of progressed and moved on, they opened up a restaurant. They left the whole ministry and trying to get us a better life, you know what I mean? And from there, it was pretty successful back in the 90s. And then they opened up a Kumon Center, which I ended up becoming a Kumon instructor this past year. I opened up my own center, got a good number of students, and why am I talking about this again? Oh yeah. So I grew up fairly well. I was well off, I guess. But what drew Danny in was because during the time I was teaching in South Central, I was like very active in the hip hop scene. Like I would be rocking a show. I would do like a Cypress Hill interview on Be Real TV, and then go down to OC at the Observatory, rock a show with DMX or the Wu-Tang, get home at 4, get up at 7, start lesson planning, drive from, I was going to UCLA at the time for my master's program. And then, so this is how my schedule would be like. I'd be out till 4, wake up, like barely eat anything, just a lot of coffee, and then immediately go to school in South Central from West LA. So it was a good like 45-minute commute in LA traffic. And then from there, I would do hip hop club, ASB, step team, and anime club. And then I would leave from there, go to my UCLA class for 3 hours. And then from 4 to 7, go down to the Orange County, which is like another hour commute. I would go to the studio, write some songs, and then we go to a show at like 11 p.m., get home at 2 and do it all over again. So like my life was crazy during that time. So, I mean, he'd always see me like super sleepy in class. Like I would just be teaching Algebra 1. Immediately when the bell rang, I'm just like at my desk, and he'd be like, like, you good? Yeah. And I was, in hindsight now, I was literally insane. I don't know why I did that. I guess I loved hip hop and I wanted a job to keep that roof over my head. But I was willing to lose sleep to like pursue my dream and passion. You know what I mean? And just me telling him stories about like, man, you got to get the education. I just wrote like a 20-page paper. And then like immediately after I'd be like, yeah, but then I rocked the set with Jizza and the RZA and the Wu-Tang. And he's like, oh man, like, and you know, he didn't know too much about the underground scene. He's like, yeah, like I know Eminem, and he'd be like reciting all these songs, these newer songs from Eminem that I wasn't even aware of, just because I probably haven't listened to M since like the Slim Shady LP. I kind of just started listening to like a different side of the underground scene. Yeah, that's what drew him into it. And then we'd have a lot of like, I hate using this term, like, but like conscious discussions and like, you know, we fancy conspiracy theories. I think they're fun to talk about. I'm not saying anything's factual, but just discussing it is just we enjoyed doing. And then from there, when he was in 8th grade, so he pretty much graduated and went to freshman year, but we still kind of kept in contact. And then that year was when he lost his mom, maybe freshman or sophomore year. And he lost his mom, and that's when we got even closer. I was taking him to the studio to go record. Like, so he was on my my last album, Inside Out, the bio that you read. And then from there, I kept mentoring him, and I would take him to UCLA with me. I would have class, and I would go meet up my professor. We would go skate on campus, and then I tutor him in the SATs. I tutored him in like geometry, algebra 2, and then I'd take him home. And then, yeah, and then ever since then, we've just been super close. took him to like my family gatherings, and yeah, I was willing to adopt him. Yeah, he's like a son to me. So
dang, that's crazy. Shout out to Danny, man. Wait, so I've never really been to LA or anything like that. So what's like can you draw a picture for me for what South Central is like? What's that demographic? I don't know much about it.
have you seen the movie, what is it? Menace to Society?
No.
That's a huge, like, I mean, if you ever grew up in the 90s, like watching all those gangster movies, like Spike Lee movies, you know what I mean? Like Boys in the Hood, any of those things. Pretty much that general area is where I used to teach.
Gotcha.
Like if you remember, like when Snoop Dogg, Tupac, and like all them were coming up. If you think about Dr. Dre, you're out in Chicago, so I don't know if they really bump West Coast music like that. I'm pretty sure you have your own scene. But like if you kind of know any of those types of movies, that area, like that Normandy and Western, do you know about the Rodney King beatings, like the LA riots?
Yeah.
Okay, if you've heard of that, the cross street was where my school was.
Oh, snap.
So like, it's pretty hood. It's not like Compton hood, but it's pretty hood.
Yeah.
Like, I'll share one story. Like, so there was one time when I was teaching, and like our school was kind of built on like this. It looked like a crack house, straight up. And so one day we were used to having lockouts. So whenever it was lockout was when the ghetto bird or like a police helicopter was hovering over. It happened like every day. We lived in like a Crip neighborhood. It was like between the 60s or something, the 40s or 60s, I forget. So one day, the principal comes like, yo, like close the doors, get all the kids inside. We're like, okay, and it's same old day. We didn't think much of it. And then we're like, man, there's a lot more squad cars than usual. And they blocked off MLK and Western. Just picture this. Every major city in the U.S., they have a street called MLK. It's usually probably one of the worst neighborhoods, like out of that state or city, right? Is what I'm guessing. From every other MLK I've seen in every other state. But like this area is like gang infested. Like there's so many different sets. Like there's Hispanic gangs, and LA is probably one of the gang capitals of the world, right? So it's not like that horrible. But this one day, there's a guy with like I think he had like an M14, like an assault rifle. It's broad daylight. It was like 1 p.m. And we're used to seeing gangsters like they're always carrying, like they got knives or whatever, like they're holding their 40. But this man was walking outside our campus, strutting around with an assault rifle. There's about 6 squad cars over here. There's about 5 right here. They blocked off 2 of the most major streets in LA. And then we have about 3 police helicopters. So I was like, we're looking outside. We're like, oh man, like it's real crazy. This is about to go down. And then so like one of my, this is right when Snapchat got big. So one of my kids goes to the other side of the room because the principal texts me like, get everyone away from the windows in case they start shooting. So then I almost said his name, sorry. Student 1 walked over to the window, and then I was like, get over here right now. And I'm usually like the pretty cool, funny teacher, like the cool uncle kind of. But that was when they saw like my bad side, and I was like, sit here right now. And they're like, whoa. And like, I've never seen Mr. K like get like that. So a lot of them were like, just like surprised that I reacted like that. But like this was, like, we thought it was like a life or death situation. And then sidebar, my car was parked right in front of the car or the house that man decided to break into. So he barricaded himself 3 houses down from our campus with an assault rifle. And usually we got out at like 2:50, 2:56, I think was when the last school bell would ring. Parents weren't allowed in. And because like, I'm in like a pretty hood school, not all the kids were eligible for the government lunch, and not all of them would have money for school lunch. So some of these kids would go without eating breakfast and go without eating lunch, and they would just eat at home. And so we were there till about 5. Not only do they hate school, right? Everyone hates school. And then so they're like, oh, I'm going to leave here, but they're hungry. And that does something to the brain, especially when they're young, And on top of the fact that I had all my kids under my office desk, and I was covering them. And literally, I remember like I was like, you know what? I signed up to like teach. I could have taught in like a, you know, like a middle class or like a more affluent neighborhood. You know what I mean? But I chose low income for a reason because I thought I could make a bigger impact. I was like, dude, I might die on the job today. Whatever. You know, I was super down. I remember thinking that, and I was like, so be it. You know what I'm saying? And then so that day, I literally had to go to my UCLA master's class, and my master's program was the urban education program. So, you know, I don't know if you know your cities in LA, or I'm pretty sure you've heard from songs or movies, but like Southgate, East LA, East Side Long Beach, Inglewood, Compton, I was South Central. And so all my classmates are like people that may or may not have seen enough or experienced enough to be able to maintain that rapport or like develop a connection with students who grow up in the hood, right? And so I'm just venting, and I'm like kind of shaking because like that was a really crazy moment, and I can't just call in sick or like because I needed to get my degree. So I still went to class, and you know my professor, like super OG, Dr. Lopez, he had me kind of explain everything, and then I was like, oh, for sure this is going to be on the news. Go home that night, was not talked about. I mean, this is going on for hours. If anything, if there was any situation where a school was on lockdown and there's some man with an assault rifle shutting down major streets in a city, you would think that would be publicized, right? It would hit the media, and then never happened. And then I literally just like, so this is what they're talking about, right? Like, they don't care about the hood. Like, they don't care. They don't give a shit. And so a week later, maybe down the street in a more affluent neighborhood, like I think it was like either the Palisades or Beverly Hills or something, a similar incident happened. There was a man, like a crackhead or something, and he was walking around with a pistol or a firearm, shut down the school. Big news. And it went on for a couple days. And they're talking about, oh, we need to work on gun violence and right to bear arms, blah, blah, blah. And I was just shocked. I was like, dude, ours was way crazier, and no one talks about it yet. Like, I mean, a firearm's a firearm. But this guy had like an assault rifle versus a man with a pistol. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't want to compare.
That's like apples and oranges, man.
Right? Like, I mean, would you be more scared if someone's walking around like an AR-15 or AK-47 and then like someone just had like a 9? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's a big difference, right? Like, I think the way that you would run would be maybe a tad bit different, right? You would probably get more frantic and a little bit more frightened when the bigger the gun, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure if someone brought out a rocket launcher, I'm sure you'd run even faster. I would only imagine. I don't know. I don't want to compare or like downgrade any sort of situation like that. But yeah, so that's what I was experiencing on the job.
That's insane.
Skin now, I guess.
I recently talked to somebody, and he was like, you know, there's a lot of stories in Chicago, Southside Chicago, or just anywhere.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And the stories don't get out. And then he was like, yeah, I follow, I think it's called Police Scanner on Twitter. And like, it's like live updates of what's going on. And so many crazy shit that happens, it never gets aired. And that, that kind of is mind boggling, because Chris and I would always say like, yeah, the news always reports the most negative things, but they pick and choose, and it's weird. It's weird. Like, I would assume they would, yeah. I would assume they would share your story, you know? And that's the same. They didn't even talk about the derecho that hit Iowa. I think there was a little video about that. Like, it was like a land hurricane that hit, and so a bunch of people lost like power and everything like that, and no news coverage until some kid posted on TikTok.
Wow.
I heard about that. I didn't see it happen, or I don't know what like the details were, but I definitely like heard that this is what happened in Iowa, but it was not on the news or anything like that. And it was like a pretty much like a global or not a global, but like a local disaster where like the city got like destroyed. Mm-hmm. And it was not in the news. It was like,
and you had like a bunch of low income residents with no access to generators. So they're struggling.
I mean, it's crazy because I remember like, I mean, I graduated in 2004, and that was like the transition time when, you know, even stores would like, they would rely on mirrors rather than cameras, you know, and this is when not everyone had a good camera phone. So people weren't like quick to just, you know what I mean? And we were kind of like the last generations. Like, I was still the generation where we were playing Snake with a phone this big, and it was like 3 pounds. You know what I'm saying? And then so it was crazy to think. I was like, I probably saw a lot more crazy stuff that happened on the daily, like bullying. Like what's cyberbullying? What's bullying? Like you just get checked right quick. You know what I mean? And then so to see that being such a commonality, and that to kind of like dwindle down, and there's all these anti-bullying movements, which is a good thing. I agree. You know what I mean? There's people that get suicidal over some of these actions. But as the years went on, like I want to say the students that were the type of youth that were being generated out of the high school, of the public school system, they were a lot softer. You know what I mean? Like I think the 90s, everyone, I mean, I don't want to say the P word, but like we were a little bit more thick skin, tough skin. You know what I mean? We were able to handle a lot more. We've seen a lot more. Like, someone just kind of put some racial slurs towards you, like whatever. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't let that ruin your day. But like you see things in the last decade or so that were happening, like everything was such a big deal, and can't believe this person said this. And of course, he shouldn't attack anyone verbally like that, but I don't know. Do you kind of know what I'm saying? Like in recent years, just the type of people that have been coming out that, like when I was in my 20s, like, and compared to a 20-year-old now, it's completely different. Like you can't even scale it.
Yeah.
And then when the protests happen, because people are so quick to start filming everything that, people probably weren't fighting as much. People weren't attacking people as much because everyone's going to be so quick to cancel you out, right? But right when the protests happened, like all hell broke loose. And I was like, whoa, like there are some really down-ass people that I wasn't aware of. I was like, wow, they had it in them. It was just kind of shocking to see. Yeah, the people just don't care anymore. It's crazy. It's a crazy time we live in.
It is a really crazy time, especially like with kind of like how fast, in a sense, like news can travel, right? Because like back in the day, like even in the 90s, right? Like if something were to like happen in like LA or like Chicago or New York, right, across the country, it'd take, a few hours, for that information to like trickle down. But like now it's like, there's like a big thing that happened, right? Was like when I think it was like Google, they were making they're building their building out in like Seattle or something like that. And one of the cranes just like collapsed. And the news like immediately came across to like, everywhere else. Everyone knew like, oh shit, did you hear about the Google, like the crane that was like building the new Google building? It just freaking collapsed, and then like it just like crushed a few cars. I think it might have killed like 1 or 2 people and like injured a lot more, but I don't know the exact numbers. But this happened about like a little while ago, and it was just crazy how fast the information kind of like comes at you now.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I know there's a lot of censoring I do on my own personally, where like, all right, don't say that, like, don't do that, just because I think cancel culture is just so prominent in society these days. You know what I mean?
It is really strong, yeah.
Yeah, like I can't imagine what it would be like. Because I have a daughter on the way. She's gonna be born in a couple months. So I'm picturing what it would be like throughout the grade levels, from grade school going all the way to high school, like the type of struggles that she's gonna have to endure. You know what I mean? Back in the day, it was like you get in a scrap. Now it's like, oh my God, this person unfollowed me on Snapchat, and like it's like a big deal. I deal with that every day, and I'm like, this is so stupid. And I'm in the principal's office dealing with 2 girls who unfollowed each other, and one was, I don't know, it's just so stupid to me. It's so trivial. It doesn't matter, insignificant. This is going to blow over in a week when someone else does something stupid on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't understand it, but
we're so tied to our social medias. Like I'm a little guilty of that sometimes, and I'm working on it. But like when I see someone that it's like, oh, I'm following you, but you're not following me. Like what's that about? But it's a weird mindset, and like I catch myself because I used to not be like that until I was super invested in social media. Like you see my stuff on like Facebook, Instagram, and I'm like, what? Why am I not getting the attention I'm getting from you? Like what's going on here? And then my fiance would be like, yo, it's not that deep. Like chill out.
Congrats. Congrats, by the way.
Yeah, she checks on. Oh, thank you. Yeah, checks me. She checks me.
You're gonna be broke.
And so this kind of ties into the your hip hop case study with the kids. And to transition, I just wanted to ask you, what you grew up blessed in a sense, right? And you were talking about how you had a pretty well-off lifestyle. What inspired you to give back to these children? You could have easily chose a different job where you're like an urban community. What moved you?
I grew up well off, but like the crowd I hung out with was a rough crowd. You know what I mean? I grew up with a lot of essays. One of my really close friends who he got shot maybe 6-7 years ago, maybe. And he was gangbanging, and I was probably one step away from like kicking it with the essays. Really could have easily went down that route, but he was like, dude, you're smart. Why would you even want to? He actually kept me out of it. He said, nah. His homies are like, man, we'll put you on the hood. What's good, homie? Like, I'm glad I didn't. I mean, I saw the fate of what happened. And a lot of other friends, they were like, actually, I don't want to say that. They were, unlawful behavior. I'll just put it at that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I was like the smart one of the group. Like I may have been around a rough crowd, but I still withheld or upheld my education. I thought that was very important. I was raised well in that sense from my parents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And both of my parents are teachers. So education was, without a question, something very important in my life. And a lot of these guys, they were either in continuation school, military school, locked up, juvie, and I would tutor all of them, and I would help them on tests. And I don't know, like I felt like that was one of the early reasons of why I thought, not every teacher, especially back in the day, we weren't as progressive, we weren't as creative as teachers, right? That when you picture a teacher from the 80s or 90s, it's like some old white guy or some old white lady with glasses, and we're going to page 31.
Yeah, by the book.
1 through 20 odd, and like you're writing standards. Like there was no like, yo, this teacher's dope. Like he actually cares. She actually cares. Like she genuinely is so compassionate that she would, like treat me as if we were family. No one went out of their way to do that. Like that, you would see that on a sitcom, like Boy Meets World or something.
Man. Throwing in the old school shit.
Right. And so I think me tutoring and mentoring a Kumon and tutoring on the side and then tutoring my homies on the side, I was like, I think I can bring something to the table where I could probably reach these kids, right? Yeah. And especially for math, because math was my forte. It's really hard to bring math to life, but I would do like fun, engaging things, like even for when I taught parabolas for Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, I would call it, it's kind of messed up, but I called it the faces of math and not like faces of death, if you remember that whole Napster video thing that went on. But instead of faces of death, I did faces of math, and then I would get them to be creative with like parabolas, or when I would be teaching the Cartesian or coordinate plane, I would correlate it to how Call of Duty, when you send in like drones, right, that you would need to have the exact coordinates, and that's how the military would do it. And then so I got all of my little Call of Duty and Counter-Strike players like, oh, like, dude, math is tight. Yo, Mr. K is dope. Like, they got super into it. You know what I mean? I felt like I could bring something more to the table.
That's awesome. That's very, very creative. Shit, I would be so engaged in that class. Call of Duty, hell yeah, airstrike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where were you when I was in like elementary school trying to like learn math and everything like that, man? I was like, dude, like I was one of those kids that like played the hell out of Counter-Strike as a kid growing up, and that was like, yeah, I was like so absorbed into video games, playing Counter-Strike, and just I was like, that's what I'm gonna do when I grow up. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play video games till like, I got old and everything like that.
Guilty.
Yeah,
still guilty.
But yeah, it's like as I got older, obviously, you know, like I came to realize like, yeah, that's probably not really realistic. Yeah, there's people that are making, you know, good money doing it, but it's like probably not going to be my thing, just because like it's too taxing on the mind. Just because like when you're playing a video game, you got to entertain the crowd, you got to entertain, you know, your viewership and everything like that. And it's like, I don't know if I can juggle like that, you know, because like when I play video games, I play for myself and everything like that. But when you have an audience, you got to get creative with that. And I'm like, I'm going to get burnt out. That's like, just leave it there.
Right. So I think one of the biggest things, so my master thesis at UCLA was, I thought teaching in the hood, we had a lack of resources. I thought that's what my master thesis was going to be about. I would do some research about, you know, low-income neighborhoods and how the lack of resources could affect the education. And I thought that was going to be it. And he's like, you know what, like, why don't you observe and kind of rethink about all the surroundings and the setting and what's going on and all the various factors and variables that are affecting their education and their success, right? So I realized that, you know what, we're in a rundown building. We're in the middle of a crip neighborhood. Like there's societal factors, familial issues. There is a presence of heavy law enforcement. There's gun violence, drugs, and trafficking. And so I thought creating a third space was really important for them. They didn't have associative student body. I was probably the most anti-ASB person in high school, but I felt like these kids actually, they needed it. They needed to have a voice. They needed to express themselves. So I wasn't getting paid to do all this extra stuff, but I did it because I thought the kids needed it. You know what I mean? So I did anime club because a lot of the kids, first Asian person that they really got to interact with, they're fascinated about Japanese. Oh, they're like, you like Naruto? And I was like, yeah, I love Naruto. Like, let me school you on that real quick, on One Piece. And so at lunch, I would have One Piece on. And for the kids who didn't want to be out on the playground or the schoolyard, we would be watching One Piece, and they'd watch it in Japanese. And so my anime club kids, they had higher literacy than the rest of the school because they were, what is it? I forget the term. By something. I can't think of it. Pretty much they're biculturalism. So yeah, so they're learning Japanese, they're hearing it, they're getting accustomed to a different culture, they're getting more cultured, and they're reading at a faster rate. So, you know, they're forced to read the subtitles in order to understand what's going on in the story. I did the hip hop club, and so we would do like little various class sessions talking about the different poetic techniques, metaphors, similes, personification, alliteration. And so I would provide all these different things in even step teams. So like I never had lunch, I never had snack, because I was always doing something for the kids to like enjoy school more, to have more of a reason to love learning, to be more engaged, to be more focused, that they would have in order to be on step team, you had to maintain a certain grade point average. In order to be the president of the ASB, that you needed to be someone that the other kids looked up to, that you need to be organized, you need to be orderly, you need to be respectful. And all these little things kind of kept it together, I guess, for the kids. Because if not, I mean, we didn't have computers, we didn't have, we were lacking a lot of things. So for me to create that third space, to maintain that rapport with the students, and kind of going from my background, I think that was a culmination of my success when I was teaching there. Yeah.
Gotcha. And
sorry,
then
I go off a lot of tangents. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. The documentary is out, so if anyone wants to see it, what was the title? It was just
transformative hip hop in the classroom. If you just go to my channel, you can see it.
Yeah.
Kaze Jones. Yep.
And do you want to talk about that? I saw that the conclusion, you know, you saw a lot of kids out there stepped out of their comfort zone. A lot of them surprised you, you know, their creativity. What was your takeaway?
So I was thinking of doing a series. I mean, COVID completely shut that down for me. Whatever, it's fine. But I did get like one episode. I had an 8-week session, and I got placement through UCLA at Mendez High School. I was looking to see, my case study was supposed to be how hip hop can engage students in their learning and inspire them to explore their own cultural identity. So the song I did for Go for Broke, my worst class or subject matter was history. And so, you know, I'm more of a math guy, more math and arts. And then, so once I got into hip hop, I feel like my literacy, my English, my motivation to expand my vocabulary happened more. So taking that and be like, you know what, if I can be in my 20s and still want to learn new words, like there's something to that kids might enjoy that. If they're already listening to rap music, why not bring a more academic side or perspective of how hip hop could be utilized in the classroom? And then, so I was looking for a very diverse student demographic, but I got there and it ended up being 99% Hispanic and like Chicano American. So like Guatemalans, El Salvadorian, and Mexican American or Chicano American. And I was hoping that they could research something within their own culture. So like, you know, they have a few, like you could talk about the Alamo or like the Mexican American War or like, I guess there wasn't that much because I was hoping that, you know, we have some Asians, we have some of this, we could talk about World War II, we could talk about the Korean War, we could talk about, oh, you're like, your family's Persian, then you could talk about something that's happened in Afghanistan or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I thought we could bring a lot of different testimonials and stories and like learn a little bit more about each other, that, you know, a lot of not underrepresentation or misrepresentation of a lot of different cultures, right? Like, so someone who is, I don't know, like from Myanmar, like you probably wouldn't have any connection to the learning because you don't learn about any of that history. You're mostly learning about maybe the Japanese and internment camps, maybe a little bit about the Silk Road with China, and then a little about Native Americans. That's kind of pretty much it. You know what I mean? That's what you learn in history, unless you get to the high school level and you're doing European history and world history. But for the most part, not everyone is represented. So this was like the opportunity for students to kind of be able to research their own histories and share that with one another. And that quite wasn't the case, which is kind of interesting for my data for the case study. And so what I took from from it was that culture doesn't have to be based on like racial identity or your nationality. You could have different cultures, like your gender, right? You could be how you identify as a woman, how there is, you could be fighting for gender equality. You could be talking about gun violence that might be prominent in your neighborhood. East Los is like a very gang-infested neighborhood as well. You know, there's like, I don't want to get into that. But anyways, there's a lot of violence going on. They could talk about gentrification that's in their neighborhood. So there's different cultures that students could talk about and research without it have to be their nationality. So they had some really interesting verses that they wrote or pieces that they wrote that was pretty awesome. So throughout the program, I was a little bit disappointed because I came in assuming that I was gonna get certain results. Oh, it's East LA. Yeah, they're probably gonna like rap, but they actually listen to banda, corrido, and like mariachi music, like super ethnic music. You know what I mean? I was like, didn't think that was gonna happen. I thought there was gonna be a lot of different nationalities. That didn't happen. You know, it wasn't until the day that they actually performed that I was like, oh, like, it was good that I did the program. They enjoyed it because up until then, they're like, you know what, this is like any other project. They didn't react to it like how I would have in high school, like how maybe Chris would have in high school. So yeah, it was an interesting case study because it didn't go perfect at all whatsoever. Yeah. But in hindsight, very honored and proud, and it was an awesome experience. Yeah.
Are you going to keep doing it as like a program?
I wanted to. My master professor from UCLA was talking about it. I was hoping to do Long Beach because Long Beach is one of the most diverse cities, maybe the nation. Cerritos is, I think, the most diverse city in the nation, if I'm not mistaken. They have like a lot of Indian, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean, white, Black, Hispanic. It's a very interesting thing. And even this one school in Long Beach, you know how they have like, I don't know if Chicago has one, but you have like a little Tokyo, a little Saigon, like little Koreatown or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's one part of Long Beach where it's like every block is a different nation or culture. And so this school is a culmination of that whole student demographic. And I was really interested in how the program would do there. especially since like Snoop Dogg and all these big names are from Long Beach. I know for a fact hip hop is a huge integral part of their community. You know what I mean? So I will have to wait until COVID dies down to maybe run that program.
Hopefully soon. And you mentioned "go for broke." For those who don't know, it was a term used to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
And it was widely used among the 442nd Regiment. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yep.
So I know in your Never Again Is Now, you featured Don Secchi in that video. He recently passed away. What was your relationship like with him?
So I was doing a lot of shows in the underground scene, but then I got approached by one of the community event organizers, and so they were having this whole commemoration, and they were paying homage and honoring the 442nd Regiment, which was the most highly decorated combat unit in World War II. They got the most Purple Hearts or something, and it's because so many Japanese Americans were kind of pretty much sacrificed to rescue other, white American soldiers from, parts of Europe, Germany. I mean, that wasn't their sole purpose, but a lot of them sacrificed their lives. And, that display of dedication and loyalty to their country was a timeless story. You know what I mean? And so I've always kind of wanted to do a song like that where I am paying homage to someone that was, or a group of people that were like true heroes. And so I literally kind of wrote it. I literally wrote it in like one night because I watched maybe a week of like documentaries and videos and interviews. And I just wrote it in one night, and then I sent it off to those organizers who were like, whoa, like this is really good. Would you want to perform it? So then Straight Out Lil Tokyo, shout out to Salt. They put me on their show, and I was able to perform for some of the veterans while they're still alive. And as you know, I think you saw on my Instagram that Don Secchi, literally 2 weeks after I released the song Never Again Is Now, where he was kind of the main star of the music video, he passed away. And even with COVID restrictions, we weren't able to go visit him, but he did get to see the premiere of the video. So he smiled, apparently. I didn't get to see it, but he did a lot of little events and Japanese American community events, and they would always kind of be there and share their story about what happened and be advocates for Never Again Is Now, I guess. Yeah. So that it doesn't happen again.
Do you know if he served with Dan Inoue?
Yes, he did.
That's amazing.
Daniel Inoue. So that's actually how I first heard about 442. My parents, they're very traditional Japanese. So like, I'm definitely the black sheep of my family. They're like, ugh, like rap music. Oh my God. Like, they have that wrong, bad connotation of what rap music is about. They don't know about like KRS-One or Mos Def or Immortal Technique or like conscious hip hop. And like, they're actually talking about real issues in society. And, hopefully through self-expression, they can accomplish something or provide insight for the youth. Right. And to bring about change. So they're like, oh, like if that's what hip hop's about and you're explaining it, then like, all right, then like, why don't you watch this documentary on NHK, Nihongo Hoso, like the Japanese network? And they did a story on the senator of Hawaii, Senator Daniel Inoue, who I actually talk about in my song Go for Broke, the whole part about losing the arm with the nade. So this man was literally probably one of the last true Americans. He was like a mentor to President Barack Obama. But he was charging up a hill, and I think they were fighting against the Germans, and they went to like this bunker. I mean, they were getting pushed back. Like, so he, I guess his fellow soldiers like, oh man, like Daniel Inoue is like, this guy's crazy. He went in like guns blazing with a Tommy gun. He had a Tommy gun in one hand, grenade in the other. I literally say that in the song Go for Broke. He threw the grenade, and then he took out one of the bunkers, and then he helped his unit advance. Like that was like a legendary story. I think there's a show on History Channel called Drunk History. You guys know that show?
Yeah.
They did one about Daniel Inouye. Yeah, so it's a pretty dope story. It's a huge story in my life, I guess. Yeah, I was very impacted from it.
Definitely. That's wild. Like, you see, that's like the crazy thing is like, this is all still like a part of American history in a sense, right? But yet we don't really hear much about all these accomplishments or like all these feats that you know, like Danny, I can't pronounce his last name, Inouye. Yeah, like how he like, you know, how he just storms a bunker, you know, just in order to help his troop advance in the line, in a sense, right? It's like it's such a crazy thought that someone that is American, you know, and he fought for the, like, you know, on the American side, and he's, at least from what I can remember, right, from my history books, it's like we don't ever hear about anything like that, right? We never hear about like these individuals that did good, because all I can really remember and all I can think about, like for World War II and everything like that, was there was a lot of internment camps. Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a lot of the internment camps, a lot of the Japanese Americans, like they were forced into like these like, in a sense, our own concentration camps. And it's like you have the 44nd Regiment like going in there, saving lives, you know, as a show of like, you know, like their, in a sense, their loyalty, or like, you know, their purpose for the cause, in a sense. You know, it's like you never hear about this. You just hear about, oh, we put all the Japanese people in, or Japanese Americans in internment camps because of what happened in Pearl Harbor. They were scared of espionage. They were scared of all these people that could potentially, you know, from within, you know, cause havoc, or like, you know, break down the American military, right? While we're making our advances. It's just crazy that you just hear about the crap that was happening to this minority group, but you never hear about the things that they did do, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, the crazy thing too with Daniel's story is not only was he clearing out nests and clearing out bunkers, but what happened was like his RPG like blew up his right arm, and the story goes like he was looking at his arm and he's like, oh shit, there's still a grenade here. So he takes it with his broken arm, lost arm, throws a grenade and continues clearing out nests. So he was doing that, dude.
That's fucking crazy, dude. Like, come on.
Fucking badass.
Even Don Secchi kind of reminded me of Daniel, because he was also missing his arm. I don't remember quite the story of how he lost it. I mean, of course I don't want to ask him. At least Daniel, I've watched documentaries to hear the story. You know, sometimes when I talk to the veterans, like I don't want to give them reminders of what happened. So here's an interesting thing. A lot of future generations of people who served in the 442nd, their granddaughters, grandchildren never heard stories because they didn't want to talk about it. It was a very dark part of their life. I mean, they lost most of their comrades. They didn't want to speak their story. So the fact that recently, there's a guy named Shane Sato who did the video for me. He has a book called the Go for Broke Spirit book. He is going around the country, still kind of touching bases with some of the existing lasting veterans. And a lot of them, the process of trying to get them to kind of share their story, it's a very arduous one. You don't really want to approach them like, you want to be very subtle and careful in how you approach them about it, because, I mean, they lived through a nightmare, you know what I mean? And so after I released the song, I had some of their grandchildren, I'll shout out April. One lady was named April, and she messaged, she's like, thank you so much. I actually showed my grandparent, who was part of the 442nd or internment camp survivor, I forget which one. And she was like, you know, thank you, because it kind of gave me like a talking point. He never wanted to share his story. Most of the veterans do not want to. They like to be left alone. So I remember she told me that. So every time I met with Dawn, like, I would just be like, hey, how are you? Like, you want a bento? Like, you know, just keep it really hunky-dory, light and positive. I don't want to be like, hey, how'd you lose your arm? Like, what happened to your friends that died? Like, that's
straight up.
Yeah. I don't want to be.
Let me be blunt over here.
I wanted to be respectful as much as possible. But of course, I wondered. Yeah, I was like, dude, you're missing your arm. I'm not gonna approach him like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then when Daniel came back, he was still getting like mistreatment. And he was like, what the fuck? And so just like that Drunk History crash course, if anyone wants to check it out on Comedy Central, it's super.
You seen it?
I've seen it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Easy to follow. Easy to follow.
Wasn't it the guy from Fresh Off the Boat? It was the dad, right? I forget his name. He was also in that Netflix movie. It's gonna piss me off. You know what's his name?
I know the actor for it was.
Figure it out.
He was in. Oh God, why can't I remember either? Fuck. Yeah, that's bothering me too now. Oh, he was the Asian guy in.
He was in Ant-Man. He was the FBI agent from Ant-Man.
What's that?
Randall Park. Yeah, I think he was the one that played Daniel Inouye on Drunk History. But yeah, totally watch it. And actually read up on the actual story or like do your research. It's a wonderful historical lesson, I guess. It's pretty engaging. You know what I mean? It's not just like a typical war story. There's a lot more depth to it for having to prove your allegiance to a country. I mean, and to have all your family and friends being incarcerated and still want to have to fight for that. I can't imagine. I can't even imagine.
Definitely. That's definitely like something that's unimaginable, right? You can't really think about it. Like it's one of those things that's so traumatizing, right? That like you're fighting for your family's safety. You're in a sense, you're fighting for your family's rights to live. And the only way to do that is to serve the government that put your family there in the first place. It's just a crazy thought that in order to show my loyalty to you guys, right, and just to show my worth, like that I am American as the next American that's standing next to me, I will do what I have to do. I'll in a sense use that term, go for broke and fight. While you have my family in internment camps, with other GIs that were just kind of like eyeing them down and just already like being prejudiced against them, it's like you never had any of the like the Japanese forces like on guard in those camps. You never, they experienced so much scrutiny from just the GIs, treating them like complete crap. And you're just here in the battlefield fighting for one, your own life. Right. 2, like to show your loyalty, and 3, to prove a point that we're not the ones that caused the bombing of Pearl Harbor. We're fighting for America. It's like
because they are American. So I mean, so the 442nd, a lot of them were second generation Japanese, meaning that they were born in America. Right. They weren't first generation. So their parents might have been like Japanese, but I'm second generation as well. So that's why it resonated with me a lot. There's one testimony. So the 442nd, their combat unit was mostly from, some were picked up from California, Gardena, Torrance, but a lot of them were from Hawaii. And so there's this one testimony from one veteran. He was like, he was already a soldier stationed in Hawaii, and he was there for Pearl Harbor. And he's seeing the ships get bombed, and he's watching a bunch of like Japanese Zero planes come over, and then he's like, he told me, but he was speaking in the documentary, like he's like, I went outside, I'm looking, and he's like, man, like the people that are bombing us, they look exactly like me, like, and I went immediately, and then these right, like they're bombing my home. So even though they were Japanese, he was conflicted, like he's an American, but he's Japanese American. The people that are attacking are Japanese, they look just like him. And then right when he wanted to go and shoot back, the officer me like, hey, no, you're Japanese, we can't trust you. And then for him to be incarcerated. So a lot of the 442, they didn't immediately get to enlist. Like it took at least a good year, I think, before they signed off and allowed for Japanese Americans to enlist and to help the American military because they weren't to be trusted. Yeah. So, you know, I thought it was really interesting that he came out like, what the, these motherfuckers, like, you know what I mean? They're bombing us, like, yeah. But like, that could have been his cousin, that could have been his brother, you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine how that would have been. I don't know how I would have reacted. I don't know.
Sometimes I think about like if China invaded America.
Like, you're American before anything. So.
Yeah, sometimes I think about like if China invaded America, I'm like, how the hell do I'm Chinese. Do I fight back?
I mean, at the end of the day, you know, it's like, this is your home. You don't know those guys.
Oh, shoot. Hold on. Wait.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Wait. Hello? I think my Bluetooth just got messed up. Hold on.
Oh.
We can hear you, though. It's also raining over here.
Right, can you hear me?
I don't know.
There we go. Sorry. You got muted for a second. Someone called. Yeah. What did you say?
I was saying, like, I was conflicted if China invaded America. I don't know how, like, fuck, I'm Chinese. Like, do I?
Right.
Fucking fight
back?
I
mean, yeah, dude, seriously.
But I'm like, I don't speak Mandarin, so yeah, I'll fire back.
How do you feel what's going on with, like, Hong Kong and the protests and, like, you know, they're fighting for their democracy and, like, how America kind of paints the picture of, you know, how everyone views China in America, like, right, oh, it's the enemy. They're going to take over the world. They're going to be the next world power. Like, and if they were to attack America, you know, which I think is very plausible at this point, what would you do? You know what I mean? That's basically what Go for Broke went through. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
or the 42nd.
I can only imagine. And you know, I wish we had more time, Kaze, but maybe next time you can come back on and we can continue talking, but this is about all the time that we have.
Yeah, no worries.
Where can people find you and, you know, your social media, your music?
Kaze Jones, Kaze Jones, like kamikaze, Kaze Jones, at YouTube, Instagram. Go to rawtunes.com. We have a lot of gear. It's kind of like Asian urban hip hop with a little bit of twist with graffiti and stuff. So we've been really trying to push that. And if you want to learn more about my hip hop and education, my academic journey through that, definitely check out that case study I did.
For sure. And before we close off, what's one last bit of advice you'd like to leave our listeners, the kids that are listening? Life advice, anything.
Any life advice?
Besides going for broke.
Okay. Any life advice? I mean, I'm tutoring some kids right now. So I think mathematics is very applicable to life. I think everything that you do should be broken down into steps. You know, it's a bunch of little steps to take to not only meet your short-term goal, but your long-term goal. You know, I have a lot of kids who get depressed with whatever's going on, and it's because they're looking at everything all at once rather than trying to like focus on one issue at a time. So I think that would be more beneficial, and you might be able to attain success easier in that form. Little steps.
That's awesome. I like that a lot. So with that said, Vince, would you like to close us out?
Yes, sir. To our viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in. This is actually our last episode for the season. So Kaze, you know, thank you for coming on.
Finale!
Yeah. Last finale. There you go.
Finished it off very strong. Well, I'll be starting school. Chris will be busy. So we're just going to be doing our own thing for a while. So we won't be back. I mean, indefinitely, we don't know, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, 50 episodes pretty much strong. It's crazy. That's crazy.
Just under 50.
Yeah, man. We met a lot of cool people, learned a lot, and look out for a recap episode. Chris and I will do a little recap. But yeah, so to our viewers and listeners, you know, you can find us at TheEatingCast, you know, all social platforms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. It was a dope ass ride. It was cool.
It was definitely dope. And to our viewers and listeners,
peace out, my brothers.
We will take care.
Peace.